approve. Ah, there she is. I guess I could say that about almost everybody. And there she is, and there she is, and there she is. So excited to see y'all today on this almost beautiful spring afternoon. Almost spring, beautiful afternoon
Almost.
is better way to almost, but not quite. All right. Oh my gosh, there are so many. I'm getting rid of that show non-video participants because I want to make sure that I can see who's in the room, and then I'll change that back. Show non-video participant. There we go. So we got a lot of people who are off camera, so I want to make sure we get a chance to say hi to y'all, even if you're off camera. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm so glad that you are here today. Let's see. We've got 17 of us in the room. I'm going to make sure. Normally I have my Sarah with me, so I'm having to do all of my Sarah stuff myself today. Okay. All right. We're doing this properly. We're doing this correctly. I'm happy. We've got the chat. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for being here today. I am so excited for this bonus session of Ask a CPA. We have some super special guests with us today. And before we get into it, however, I do have just a few things that I want to highlight for you that have nothing to do with our session today. One of them is, I know it's unbelievable, but we have a beneficial ownership information update because they won't stop. Oh my God, it is the biggest cluster I have ever seen in my entire career. Which is like, this will be year number 25 for my business, but like I've been doing this for even longer and I have never seen anything like this. I
Wow.
just can't believe it. I'm throwing the link to my LinkedIn, my most recent LinkedIn comment on this, which is what happens is that I know I just updated y'all on this last week, right? I said, hey, here's what's going to happen next. It's literally changed since last week, and it had changed since the week
Oh,
before
wow.
when I updated you last week. I know it's nuts. So, what is going on now is that even when Treasury, FinCEN specifically, gets around to issuing their interim guidelines, which they promised they would do before March 21st, and they said they were going to change the due date. And then they said that they were going to simplify things to make it less burdensome for the people that they're not trying to target, the people they're not going after, the people who aren't trying to money launder, basically. Like, how can we identify them and then, make some changes to it? So they said they were going to do this. And then while we were in that interim period waiting for this update, Treasury says, you know what? Even once that comes out, we're not going to enforce it for domestic companies. So yes, right now, and this is not for a period of time. This is the new rule under the current regime is even if FinCEN says, here's what the new rules are going to be, FinCEN can say whatever they want because the Treasury Department is not going to enforce it. There will be no penalties for domestic companies. All right, so that is the new rule on BOI. It is effectively dead in the water. How we're going to see this play out in the court system, how we're going to see this play out with one subset of a governmental branch arguing with their parent branch. I don't know what that's going to end up looking like. We don't care right now. As far as our clients are concerned, as far as we are concerned, there is no requirement for beneficial ownership information reporting. Even once a requirement is issued, there will be no penalties for non-compliance. That's our newest news. I know you cannot make this stuff up, folks. really. Next thing I wanted to mention is that as of last night, our most recent Ask a CPA recording is up, and it's got a really funny name because normally it actually says what the month and the day and the year of it is, but the link just says month, day, year because my husband and I were really tired last night and we missed that. So this is the February 26th recording of Ask a CPA, which is a really fun one. I mean, they're all fun, honestly, as far as I'm concerned anyway. And so I just threw that into chat. Also, upcoming events. We've got the next Ask a CPA is going to be held Friday, March 14th at 1 p.m. I just tossed that in chat. And the one after that will be Monday, March 24th at 1:30 p.m. Central. Just tossed that in chat. I know I said that the last Wednesday of the month at 2 p.m. Central would be our new slot, but unfortunately in March I have a conflict. It's tax season, surprise. So instead we're going to do it on the Monday before that. At least one of these will have a special session on how to take a client's Schedule C and put it into a blank QuickBooks file, basically. Client's got a new QuickBooks file. They don't have any historical books whatsoever, but they do have prior tax returns. How do you get that data from the tax return to 12/31 of each year in just the form of a journal entry so that you have cumulative, starting balances that you can deal with, or you have comparative information so that when you want to do year over year, you at least have something to look at in terms of prior years. So I'm pretty excited about that. That's something we've gotten a lot of requests for. So that is in the works. Yeah, Kimberly's like, that's perfect. I'll be needing to do that soon for someone. Yes, I know that it is something that when I had to figure out how to do it myself, it was really hard. And I don't want other people to have to figure out how to do it themselves. As simple as that. So that's one of them. I don't know. I'm hoping that'll be the next one, but if not, it'll be the one after that. Okay, on to the fun stuff for today. We have got Aneisha Velazquez, Genest Tarnow, Shiree Ross-Page, and Caroline Passmore, and they are sharing their experiences in the volunteer income tax assistance and the tax counseling for the elderly programs with us, specifically connecting how learning about the tax preparation experience firsthand has made them better bookkeepers. So if you are interested in volunteering, but you have questions about it, if you're curious as to how learning to do tax returns improves your bookkeeping knowledge and collaborations with tax pros, if you are wondering what's involved, what kind of training do I get, what should my next step be, I want to do this, then today is your day to learn about all of these things. And of course, as with all of these, we are going to have a recording in our recordings section of Circle. And if people are okay with it, I might actually, this might be one of the few that I make public because I just think it's such an important topic, not just volunteering and giving back to society, but having this be a win-win where you're getting something out of it for your own business as well. So I hope that's what you tuned in for because that's what we're talking about. I wanted to start out by asking our volunteers. Aneisha, you were the one who inspired this whole thing with your wonderful LinkedIn post, and I reached out, and you were so as you always are, just so eager to help and to participate. What motivated you to volunteer for this program?
Well, I actually used this when I was in college as a student because I didn't really know how to do taxes. And then once I moved from W-2 work to 1099, I felt out of my depth and I didn't want to do anything wrong. So I forget how I found out about the program, but it was really easy to go and I would give them all my papers and they would get it done. So, and I just wanted to be able to be on the other side now. So felt like a good way to come full circle.
That is a
Mm.
fantastic reason. I love the fact that you actually benefited from this, and so you're coming back to it as on the other side of it. That's just so beautiful. Megan, you also had some special reasons for wanting to volunteer.
For me, I used to hang out with the people on tax Twitter, right? For years and years. But like I felt like a huge imposter because I don't do tax. So when I was like literally reading the paper and they have a list of volunteer opportunities and one of
Like a
them was
physical paper?
volunteer.
You were
Yep,
reading the
I
paper?
get a physical paper.
Oh, that's so awesome.
And like one of the volunteer opportunities was prep, and I'm like, what? I could learn how to do this, and then I will have some street cred with my friends over. Used to be Twitter, now on Blue Sky, and so that was what got me started.
That's fantastic. Okay, so I love how different your and Anisha's. I mean, we all obviously have that underlying I want to volunteer because, it's a good thing to do for society and it makes me feel better, right? But in addition to that, Anisha being like, "Hey, I used this. It was good. It was helpful. I want to circle back around to that." And for you to be like, "I'm actually learning how to do this so that I'm like removing some of my imposter syndrome and actually being able to like talk tax talk with my buddies. I love that. And Caroline, you had some particularly motivating reasons as well.
Oh, I have a whole totally different story. So here you go.
Yeah.
I was getting my MBA, and I had tossed the idea of getting my CPA, but would have had to go back and get additional bachelor's credits. So my advisor had suggested I get my CMA instead of my CPA. So we were kind of talking back and forth. He's like, "Well, have you thought about doing taxes?" I was like, "Yeah, maybe. I don't know." So he then suggested I try the VITA program to see if that was something I was interested in. So that's how I got involved in the VITA program because I was like, "Well, let's see if I have any interest in doing taxes."
I love it.
So I did VITA program while I was pursuing my MBA because I did my master's with an accounting concentration.
Mhm.
So that is where I got involved in the VITA
That's
program,
fantastic. So
which was
finding out whether you might even want maybe I want to do taxes, maybe I don't want to do taxes. How do you make that decision if you haven't done them? I yeah,
exactly.
that is a fantastic story as well. And actually, Shiree, I know you're not listed on this first question, but I'm just curious to hear your motivation as well.
Just being a bookkeeper for me, I always have tax questions from clients, and that's one of the reasons I joined CPA. And a lot of your posts that I read, and just the feedback from of the members in Axe, a CPA group, and it started to be kind of intriguing and curiosity. And
Curiosity.
so yeah, and so I started looking up more of the publication on IRS and reached out to a couple of individual CPAs, and somehow I got connected with an IRS person that asked me about VITA, and I'm like, I don't know what that is, and he tried to explain what it is, and I was like, okay, and he's like, try to volunteer and see if you like it. So I got connected with someone AARP and went to the training, and it's like it was like, okay, I think I can do this. And so after the training, I realized it's not as scary as I thought with taxes.
Uh-huh.
And so it kind of brought me full circle as a bookkeeper to be more accessible and a resource for my clients. So I thought it was just a great opportunity, and also just to give back.
I love this. So all four of you have very different stories about your motivation and how you decided to come to this in the first place. That's absolutely wonderful. So to clarify, Cherie, you're doing the tax counseling for the elderly program, the TCE. Is that correct?
I'm actually doing both.
Oh, you're doing both. Oh,
Yeah.
all right. So put a pin in that because I want to circle back around at some point if we have enough time. I want to know how they're different from each other because I've always been curious about that. I've participated in VITA, but not in TCE. So yeah. And with my mom in a nursing home right now, I'm especially feeling like TCE would be maybe a really good
It's
next
actually
step for
great.
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So next question, and I navigate over here to it. We wanted to know what kind of training you receive. Megan and Caroline, do you want to sort of bounce that between the two of you and fill in any gaps?
I mean, I can start.
Go for it.
I am volunteering with a local organization called Prepare and Prosper, which does financial counseling also, in addition to the VITA program. And they had it felt like a pretty comprehensive in-person, I want to say like 12 hours of training
Oh,
on
wow.
scenarios and actually using TaxSlayer and preparing us to do the certification exam.
And actually, I'm going to interrupt you there just for a moment in case the bookkeepers don't know. TaxSlayer is a brand of tax preparation software that is for professionals. So I use ATX. Lots of people will use Pro Series or Pro Connect, or there are a zillion different Drake. There are a lot of different ones out there. TaxSlayer is simply one of them, and I believe that they donate this program basically.
I think they do, or they have a contract with the government. So it is the one, I think, that all the different
that all of
sites
them
use.
It was different back when I volunteered. I try and remember what we used. I think we used Pro Series. But we also did not get a lot of training, and it was very frustrating to me as a tax professional sitting in there and seeing what other people were learning and being like, whoa, 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 how are they going to do this? And luckily they put me in, not luckily, I mean, they, as obviously a professional tax preparer, they put me in an advice or like a review role. And so as the ones would come through that other people had prepared who were not professionals, they had professionals who were also volunteers reviewing them to make sure, we were catching stuff, which, by the way, is how I found out that I talk out loud to myself as I'm doing tax returns. I did not know that. I was sitting in the volunteer because, I don't know. Are you guys doing this in a physical room, or are you doing this from home? How does that work?
Physical room.
Physical room.
And location. Yes, you have to go to the location to do it.
We were like that as well. And there I was sitting with the other reviewers, and one of them said, "Oh, do you always talk out loud to yourself when you're preparing returns?" I said, "Huh? What do you mean?"
That's cute.
So Megan and Carolyn, Carolyn, you're agreeing with what Megan said, where you are also a comprehensive training program?
Absolutely. And then they gave us these humongous books of the tax guides, so that there's always a lot of reference information to make sure that we had as much guidance to know, so that we didn't have if we had questions, we were always able to refer to the
That's
guides.
Wonderful.
So
is that the CPH Master Tax Guide, or is that Kleinrock, or do you know?
We've got like in the 4012.
It's a publication, yeah.
But also my site does the organization I do it with does their own manual each year that kind of dumbs down and puts it in more plain English, and also tells you for further, here's the section you'd need to go to in that manual.
Wonderful. All right.
Which was really helpful. And then
I wish we had
I'm surrounded by people with experience, right? Like I was new, but most of the people at my site had been volunteering for years.
Yeah.
And so it was great to have that resource around me.
Yeah.
We did have multiple people that had been helping out. So we always had assistants to come and assist with any questions, and multiple people available at each shift and things to help people answer questions and give guidance for any problems, some unusual situation should arise. But it's simple tax returns, because we didn't do complicated at our site. We didn't do very many anything by way of a complicated tax return.
Some of them are complicated.
Yeah, I would love to hear from everybody.
It always goes through review, so there's that too.
So what would be considered too complicated for your site to not accept it? So, for example, could somebody who has an S corp or a partnership show up? No. It's all 1040. No. Okay.
And they can't have any losses.
They can't have any losses?
No losses.
Yeah.
All right. What other things do we have? Can they have their own business, like a Schedule C, that they can?
Yes. A lot of them do. You get a lot of gig workers, a lot of
Ubers.
drivers. And...
Yeah.
Right.
have a lot of those
What about
landscapers.
rental
Mhm.
properties? Are they allowed to have any rental properties?
Can't
Um,
recall anything
Yeah,
of
for
that
not
nature.
the AARP, they are, but nothing too complicated. Um, but definitely not for the VITA. I don't know if anyone had that experience. I think they said we couldn't for VITA.
Is there somebody at the location who is basically doing the intake with each person and they're
Yes.
deciding, no, this is too complicated for us. I'm sorry.
Well, there's like a
And we
whole
have a
checklist
coordinator.
and a
Hmm.
list of like there's salary limitations, there's income limitations, there's other limitations that hopefully they catch during you know on when they first come in, but they can still get to you, and you have to be able to assess that as well.
Okay.
At least for me.
All very helpful. Very helpful. How has the experience, Aneisha, this is one in particular I want to ask you about because this is something that you talked about a little bit on your LinkedIn post that inspired this. How has the experience improved your bookkeeping knowledge and your collaborations with tax pros?
It started with the training. Because when you go through their training, at least for me, I learned how tax people, I guess, are thinking when they're preparing the taxes. And it's
You got
different
to
from
see inside our
bookkeeping.
crazy brains.
Yeah, it makes sense now. Because they're thinking in terms of, income, money in, then the deductions, then the credits. Like just seeing how like what's going through tax people's brains just helps me realize like for the bookkeeping what information they're going to need and what it
Right.
needs to look like to make it easier, because there's also just a ton of information that like because on my first day I was just watching the other preparers and just seeing the amount of information they're like processing as they're inputting the information, um, that if the person doesn't provide it to them, it might get lost. Like I
Yes.
remember there was one example, like they'd gone through the whole process, they were reviewing the return, and then the taxpayer was like, oh, like can my medical expenses like give me more back? And she hadn't mentioned it. It was like the first time.
Yeah.
So just stuff can get easily missed. So
Very
like,
easily. And
yeah.
I
So
feel
like,
like
yeah.
that's one of the biggest
Mhm.
challenges of being a tax
Mhm.
preparer is asking the right questions. So
Mhm.
some people will say, "Oh, taxes, it's just taking the
Mhm.
information and putting it into the right fields." And I'm like, "Whoa, that's
Mhm.
so not true,
I
right?
used
You
to
have
think
to
that.
know." You did? Did you? Tell me more about
Yeah, I
that.
used to think that. I just used to think that, you just give them all the information, they know what to do, but it's really like you said, asking the right questions,
Yes.
probing, because sometimes there are
Probing.
things in different forms they don't know that they need to provide you, and they're missing those tax credits or that ability to reduce their tax liability. And if they don't tell you, you don't know. So I've learned a lot too.
Well, let's stick with that. Let's stick with that, Shiree. What are some key tax concepts that you've learned through volunteering that have directly improved your bookkeeping skills?
I think for me, I was just taking everything that the client gave me, not understanding that there are certain things that can be a deduction and not assuming everything is a deduction. And learning, for the big takeaway for me, is learning to go to some of the publications. There's tons of IRS publication, but specifically for business expenses that I didn't even know exist really. So now I'm looking at expenses and I understand what is a deduction and what isn't, and learning what can apply as far as credit for those business owners. So it just gives me more of a broader concept and understanding of how the tax world really works. I still have a lot to learn, but just a handful of that information helped me to be better bookkeeper and have a better conversation with my clients.
Well, one of the things I love that you mentioned in there, and when we were preparing for this, is the difference between a deduction and a credit. And you had
I
talked a
didn't
little
realize
bit,
that.
yeah, learning about how different tax credits, like the child tax credit or the American
Tax
Opportunity
credit, yeah,
Tax Credit or
up
the
to
Earned Income Tax Credit, that
income credit.
you can recognize income sources and track deductions that actually can then affect those credits, right? So do you
Yeah,
want
and I
to,
didn't realize that.
yeah?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I really didn't realize that.
So
Oh, sorry,
for
Nancy, go ahead.
anybody, no, it's okay. So for anybody who's not sure about what we're talking about when we talk about a deduction versus a deduction is something that reduces your income. So we'll give a very simple example for a Schedule C person. Let's say they get a 1099 for $1,000 for let me see, for sending out newsletters. And so they had to print the newsletters and then they had to put them in envelopes and then they had to put stamps. So the print cost, the envelopes, and the stamps, those are all deductions against that $1,000 of income. So now the person only has $800 of taxable income, right? As far as the tax that they're paying on that income, that's a percentage. We have a graduated system, so it's not always the same percentage for every person. There are brackets and everything, but they're paying a percentage of that. They're gonna pay as tax. But a credit dollar for dollar reduces
Dollar.
your tax. So it's way more valuable, but they're harder to get at. And there are a lot of hoops that we have to jump through. And I love that you were like, oh, actually, some of the stuff that I'm doing as a bookkeeper is now giving you insight into that, which is just fantastic. Let me see, Megan, I have a question for you. Have you encountered, I'm saying have you, but I know you have, any bookkeeping red flags while preparing tax returns that you now address in your bookkeeping work proactively? And spoiler alert for those at home or those who are watching this later, I got a text from Megan this morning being like, oh my God, guess what happened? Talk to me.
This is like, yeah, I had one last year, I had one this year, and these are the things that like just, that there's that one meme of the little girl shaking her fist and going,
Yes.
AirPods fall out and
Oh
broke them.
no, because you shook your fist.
She's like my anger translator, right?
Yeah.
And so this time was because we do low income people, right? And this woman was working 3 different jobs as a cleaner, and she had 2 W-2s, and then she had a 1099 from a local nonprofit who
From a nonprofit.
their website, this like workforce now program of helping people get into the workforce. And she's like, I've never had a 1099 before. What is that? I'm like, well, it basically says that for this part of your income, you're self-employed. She goes, I'm not self-employed. Like, they told me when I had to show up. I punched in, I punched out. They showed me where to go. They gave me the supplies, and I'm like,
Yes.
furious, right? Because it's like,
Shaking your
now we
fist.
have this tax burden, so I'm like, well, let's see if we can come up with any expenses for you. Like, what percentage of your cell phone, because they were texting you where to go each time. And and she would take the bus to the main site, and then she would have to like take the bus multiple times on her own dime to different places they were sending her. So we're calculating and estimating that. But it's like, for this woman who like her total income was less than $15,000,
Oh God.
oh, 200 because of the miscategorization by that organization, just has me on fire. And there was one last year, again, it was nonprofits, right? It was different youth soccer leagues that, so this kid came in. I'm like, well, did you have any other income that was not on a W-2 or a 1099? He goes, well, yeah, but it was all under $600. I'm like, excuse me? He was working for all of these different organizations who coordinated to make sure that they never paid, like they handed these guys cash on the field, but coordinated so that none of them paid over $600. I'm like,
so that they wouldn't have to issue a 1099, not realizing that doesn't make it non-taxable.
Oh, they should know. They should know, right? It's like they saved them the effort, but
oh, I love this. Hope Brown is in the chat going, can you say Department of Labor?
I'm going to be calling this, I have a name of this nonprofit. So I will be calling them later today and just like, let's talk through this program.
Yeah.
Because you hear that
Good
a
for
lot. I don't
you
know if
that
you
you're
guys hear it
taking
with
the
small
next
businesses,
step. I really appreciate that.
but I hear it a lot with nonprofits. It's like, well, we can't afford to have them as employees. I'm like, well, that's not actually one of the criteria.
Yeah. Yeah. If you look at the
It's like outsourcing that cost to the
yeah,
people who
you're putting it on their shoulders.
Yeah.
Somebody's paying the tax on that.
Right.
If you can't afford to do it, what makes you think that this person who's making $15,000 a year can afford to do it?
Right.
Also, we have rules at the Caroline is saying that's disgusting. I totally agree.
Yes.
We see it a lot though, don't we all see it a lot? I mean, it is common, unfortunately, whether we're seeing it in our professional lives or our personal lives. Sometimes it's our clients who are saying, I can't afford to hire them as an employee. And so we give them the link to the IRS website. Is it a contractor or is it an employee? And we tell them to click the links on the three main areas where you're going to ask questions. And we actually have turned that into a little Word doc where we can send it to the client and say, you need to write the answers down here for each of these questions, and we'll help you decide whether they're an employee or a contractor. It happens quite often. A lot of people in the chat are saying, yes, they see this a lot. So you got to see firsthand how this can really affect somebody that it shouldn't be affecting. And I'm really proud of you that you're going back to this organization and saying, hey, I need to learn more about what you're doing here. That's a little bit heartbreaking. Hope, you had your hand raised. Are you still?
I was just so frustrated as she was talking because I have seen I used to work at H&R Block. Okay. That's how I started my career.
Okay.
But we would see those people come in with those 1099s and similar to what she was describing, making pennies, but being treated like employees, being told where to be, all of those things, struggling and afraid to go back to say anything because they didn't want to lose that work opportunity. It was disgusting.
It is. It's absolutely disgusting. This is a big takeaway for anybody who is listening to this. Again, we're going to make this one public. This isn't just within Ask a CPA. For anybody out there, if you're thinking that you can't afford the burden of having employees, then you probably need to rethink your business structure and how it is that you're doing business, because you're not helping your community by trying to get away with this. We have a lot of restaurants, and we will not work with a restaurant who's not willing to add the tips to the W-2. That's just not an option for us. We will not work with restaurants who pay people under the table. They think they're helping sometimes, like, oh, look, I'm getting away with something, you're getting away with something. But in fact, something that happens in those situations is that the person who would have been receiving a W-2, they don't get enough credits for Social Security. And it comes time, this happens to cleaning folks all the time as well, delivery folks as well. They get to time when they're supposed to be able to get on Social Security, and they're not able to claim it. Megan was mentioning in the chat how I have courier stories too. This happens a lot. You may know that I often work with cooperatives. I do a lot of education in the worker co-op space. And one of the things that we see is companies who have bike messengers, and they're always paying their bike messengers on 1099. Now, bike messenger is not a 1099 kind of gig, right? It's just not. You look at all of the things. Maybe the one thing that they have is their bike, but otherwise, everything that points to them definitely being an employee relationship. Well, these folks get hit by cars all the time, and they don't have workers' compensation. And so eventually, the way that I meet these people is that they will band together and they'll create their own workers' co-op so that, at the very least, they will be able to pay into a fund together for when one of them gets hurt. It's pretty complicated, but yeah, this is a big one. All right, shameless plug. Hope it's not shameless. We are thrilled to share your plugs. She is doing, everybody. I know I asked her to talk about this briefly a few Q&As ago, which is that she is doing these wonderful lunch and learns. They are free to the public. She has a different topic each time. She, in her upcoming one, is going to be talking about proper classification for employees versus contractors, and the link is in the chat. Hope I will make sure that that link gets into the recording as well. And since we're going to be making this one public, I'll make sure it gets into the YouTube notes as well, because some people just don't know that it hurts other people. Other people know perfectly well. All right, we'll get off that soapbox. We'll get off that soapbox and go to the next question, which is, it's another question for Megan, actually. How has working with taxpayers firsthand influenced the way that you educate clients? And it is sort of related to what you were just talking to us about.
Yeah, I think it's made me more strict on like helping them understand employment law, and more understanding. It's like the people that we work with are working so hard, right? And they are trying so hard to do the right thing. And most of them come in really pretty organized,
That's amazing.
they save every piece of paper they think might possibly be relevant. And
all right, I'm seeing some nodding from the other panelists. Has this been your experience as well? Are they generally coming in pretty organized?
Yes.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Aneisha,
Oh, yeah.
Carolyn? Yeah.
They come with a folder or with a pile of or an envelope with all of their little papers and ready to go.
Wow.
And I don't know.
I wish they were my clients. That's beautiful.
I don't know about where you guys live, but where I live, a lot of them don't even speak English, but they come in with their piles of paper and they are ready to go.
They want to do it
They
right.
even come with their prior year folders, don't they, Carolyn?
Yeah.
Yes. Stats,
Oh,
they're pretty
exactly,
organized.
prior years.
Y'all, this is beautiful to hear. This is beautiful to hear. Yeah, so Megan, you were saying they're going to school full time like Aneisha was back in the day. They're working 2 or 3 jobs. They're coming in organized. These are hardworking folks.
Yeah.
That is
And it's just, it makes me, I don't know, I feel like I understand them more, and it makes me absolutely furious with like tax cheats and people that are anybody that has like so much more than they have and yet are trying to game the system.
Yeah.
Where like sometimes they're immigrants, they've got, they can work, but they're not going to be able to get Social Security later. They're paying into the system. They're doing everything they can to do it right. And then to hear them, denigrated on the news or like.
Yeah. It makes you have a lot less patience for people who, don't want to participate in social programs or, or not in my backyard. Aneisha, I've got a question for you about unexpected challenges. Did you find that there was anything as a volunteer tax preparer that you came up against that was not expected? And if so, how has that affected your approach to bookkeeping?
And maybe challenge is a strong word, but just the process, remembering everything, because they have a certain way they do things, at least at the site I volunteer at.
I want to dive into that. Where are each one of you volunteering? Where are you, Aneisha?
Yeah, so since I've been in New Mexico, like during this time period, so I'm actually volunteering.
Okay.
So with New Mexico Tax Help.
And Megan?
I'm in St. Paul, Minnesota. So I do it at do this nonprofit at a local community center.
And Carolyn?
I am in Southwest Florida.
Florida?
Yeah.
And Shiree?
In Columbia, South Carolina. I volunteer for the corporate ministry, VITA, and then ARP for the seniors.
All right. So we're all over the place. So Aneisha, you were saying in your particular area.
Yeah. So just I guess the hardest for me, it was really just all the little things, because when you're in tax layer, like it walks you through what to do next. So just getting used to the process. I guess I didn't expect it to be like just something more to remember. I almost just wanted to make myself a little checklist, like, to make sure I don't forget anything.
I have a
And
checklist.
yeah.
I do when I do my taxes. So I at this point in my firm, I have another CPA in my company, Julie, who's amazing and has been doing taxes even longer than I have. And she is doing the returns, and then it comes to me, and I'm reviewing every single return before I sign off on it. And I have to have a checklist because it's very easy to let something fall between the cracks, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and it just makes me appreciate, because for bookkeeping, I have like checklists and projects, and yeah, so it just makes me appreciate that even more. I'm like, yeah.
That's fantastic.
Mhm.
Now, all right, so checklists and being organized and workflows, all of those kinds of things in mind. Are y'all finding that each site is doing it the same? Do you all have, and you haven't talked with each other yet about this, but does each site have their own way that they're doing it, or are they having you rely on the tax slayer questionnaire? No.
I mean, there's not a tax layer questionnaire. There's like a government form that they
Okay.
just redid this year, so that is a little bit more confusing than it used to be. Our nonprofit has their own form
Okay.
that we have to go through that asks some additional questions. I think that's one of the most challenging things is like making sure you're asking, because some of it's on the form, but there are other questions
Yeah.
that you need to ask them that aren't on the form to actually, maximize the benefit for them, or just make sure you're thinking of the right things. Right. And for me, it's like things around, like, I think filing status is really challenging.
Filing status
And
is
like
so
knowing
challenging.
who's in the house, and like asking the question of who else lives with you, and like understanding all that part.
And I think that's a big challenge for especially new people that have never done this before, because those are kind of the questions that are not necessarily on the forms, but they're ones that people wouldn't know to ask if they're new
Yes.
to doing, tax returns.
One
Well,
that
there
I
was something
see a
this
lot.
year too, right?
go
That
ahead.
there you can get like an exception if you have a distribution from your retirement account for, like, there's a like no questions asked emergency thing, or additional amounts for victims of domestic violence, and like that's a hard thing to ask somebody.
It's a very hard thing to ask somebody.
Impacts their the money they get back.
And I think that this is something that I just want to reiterate. I know we talk about it a lot in Ask a CPA, but the role that we're playing as bookkeepers and tax preparers, it is the most trusted role in society. And this is one of the reasons. Sometimes we have to ask hard questions. They need to know that they're in a safe place, a non-judgmental zone. They need to be able to tell us about things like when they're being paid under the table. They need to be, like you were saying about domestic violence. I actually started crying during a National Association of Tax Professionals annual tax update a couple of months ago. I'm trying to remember who it was. I think it was Kathy Morgan, who was talking about the domestic violence one. And she was just like, when you ask this question, you need to know that they may not ever have told anybody else about it. You may be the only person that they are trusting with this information. Be kind. Be kind.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
Absolute fact.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Oh my gosh, there's so much that we could break down there. I want to be mindful of time, so we're going to move on, but we can circle back if we have enough time at the end. Shiree, I wanted to talk to you in particular about, I know that you said you would absolutely recommend that other bookkeepers gain tax prep experience through volunteering. I want to hear why.
I think for me, it's an opportunity for a deeper understanding of the tax process, how it impact my role as a bookkeeper. I think for me, I'm able to more not just focus on the numbers, but also understanding my client, what's going on in their life, and knowing at the end of the year, all those deductions, numbers, their status, status change. Those are important aspects of the tax world that impacts them. And so I think for me is I'm not just looking at the numbers now. I'm looking at, okay, what's going on with my client? What
Oh,
are
I have to interrupt
changing
you for a
throughout the
second
year?
because that is beautiful. That is gold. Yes. So when I teach reasonable compensation, one of the big things that I bring up is that I think bookkeepers are actually better positioned to calculate reasonable compensation for S Corp owners than their annual tax preparer because often the tax pro only has a once a year touch point. Now, I don't think it should be that way. That's another whole webinar we could do on that one. I think the tax pros should be proactively working with the bookkeeper and their client throughout the course of the year. But often that's not the case. But you, Shiree, are having the opportunity to talk to your client throughout the course of the year, get to know them, get to know their pain points. You're getting to know the areas that they're struggling with, and you're getting to know about their thoughts for the future, their plans. And by having insight into doing taxes, you are now asking them a different set of questions, right? Than you might have other words. Sorry to interrupt you, but I
Yeah.
just got very
No,
excited about that.
that's right. Yeah, no, that's right on the money. That is exactly how it changed my concept and my understanding and just my mindset change of how I work with my clients overall. And educating them too. From what I learn, I educate them why your tax preparer might ask this, why it's important to have all your documents, why, how that impacts you at the end of the year. So it's really broadened my horizon and my understanding of how important and how bookkeepers and tax preparers connect and how they work together to make it more efficient and
Well, and I
successful
bet
for
the
their
tax
clients.
preparers are loving you a lot more now also because your
Yes.
collaboration with them is now like when you're seeing how important it is for your clients to collect these pieces of information, for example, that makes it less work
Yes.
for the tax pro, right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And also, it changes my perspective how I prioritize my books, my chart of accounts, because now I understand this needs to transition over exactly the way it is on a Schedule C, whether it's an S Corp, C Corp, whatever the case may be. So that gave me even a better understanding for me as a bookkeeper.
So you've got
What I love
actual
about
real
that.
world scenarios, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead,
Yes.
please add.
And another thing I love about that, Shiree, is that because I think that starts to lead to greater financial literacy for your clients, right? When they can see, okay, here's the numbers in my books, here's how they flow to my tax form. I understand what this thing is now.
Absolutely.
Like
Yes.
you get to see the lights go on, and they ask
A
better
lot of
questions.
it.
It's so exciting, right?
Yes. It's so exciting. It really is.
So Caroline, are you also seeing that like the real world scenario effect here and expanding your skill set and improving your value to your clients and referrals with tax pros? How are you seeing the same
Oh,
kind of payoff?
oh, absolutely. I have always seen that because I mean, being that I have a CMA, so
Right.
I'm not just learning taxes. I've always had the taxability. I did taxes early on in my career. I chose not to continue doing
Understandable.
them.
Yeah. It's not for everyone. I get it.
No, no, I chose not to continue
Well, look
them,
at you.
but
You decided not to do it, and yet you are
yes,
doing them in
continue
this
doing it
program.
as a volunteer in the VITA program because that is a completely different aspect of doing taxes. That's and it keeps me current with understanding tax regulations because it
Absolutely.
requires me to stay current
Yes.
so that I then can continue to serve my
I'm
clients.
so glad you mentioned that because, tax laws change annually and the
Absolutely.
need for, tax ready bookkeeping, it that increases and increases and increases. Shiree was talking about developing a chart of accounts that's actually easy to take where what I always recommend is find out what entity type your client is, pull up that tax form and make sure for any one of those fields that your client actually would use where they actually have income or expenses in those areas. Make sure for those fields there's a one-to-one correlation. And if you need to break it out further, great. For managerial purposes, that's wonderful. Add other ones. but you need to at least have those as a minimum, and you can always use sub accounts. And that way
Right.
it prevents the tax pro from having to dig around. So yeah, you picked up on that pretty early in your career, having studied taxes, but then done them and then decided not to do them.
Correct.
As Hope
Correct.
mentions in the chat, it is a labor of love. There's no question about that. So if folks are interested in volunteering, what should their next step be? Shiree, I know you had your own thoughts there to share with us.
Yes. They definitely can visit the IRS site. There's a website under the IRS. There's a lot of like the corporate administry, ARP have it on their site as well if you want to volunteer to do taxes. Once they visit the site, it will tell them how to apply, how to get started, and they can fill out. It's just a real short little information, and usually get an email when they can go and get trained and certified. And usually there are site coordinators that gets your information and they'll register you and sign you up for training. Every site is different with the training, but whether it's the IRS or ARP site, but the IRS site does have more of a broad information, and it has where you can click on a link based off of your zip code, give you a list of organization that provides training and certification.
Now, I've put that link in the chat, but I'm just going to say it out loud here. It will, of course, be in the recording and the YouTube notes, but it's irs.gov/individuals/IRS-tax-volunteers. And if you didn't hear that, you can just go back 10 seconds on the recording and hear me say it again. Yeah, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because the way I found it is I just Googled the VITA organization in my area and just directly emailed them. Because I remember Kate from Bookkeeping Side Hustle had a hard time getting someone to respond. So, and I didn't want to waste time.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
I
Nice. Directly emailed 2 people and they got back to me, and that's how I got started.
Oh, that's great.
Cool.
That's absolutely fascinating. Now, Aneisha, a question that I have for you is, do you already have to know a lot about taxes before you get started, or will they take people who have never had any experience?
Yeah, they'll take anyone who's never done it and go through the training program, and they're really like, you could reach out anytime you have questions.
And once you've gone through the program, can you volunteer at other places, or do you know how that works?
From what I've heard, because for this site, you have to pass the advanced test. They're like, we don't do basic, it's advanced. So
I love it. Now, do you have any idea what the difference is between the basic and the advanced?
I have no idea, honestly.
Yeah,
because you didn't have any choice in the matter.
Basic,
you had
Well, the basic allow you to be a intake person where you can do the intake sheet form and go over it, but the advanced allow you to be a tax preparer. That's the only difference between the two.
It's different because you can do basic returns with the basic certification. I was basic for 2 years before I got my advanced this year.
Okay,
so
maybe
they won't allow you at the other sites.
Yeah,
they won't allow you to do it.
Self-employment, they do. I mean, I'm trying to think of the things that are advanced only. Self-employment is advanced only. Retirement, pension, where the tax status is not determined, is an advanced topic. There's a few that basic preparers can't do.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, the VITA sites for some reason won't allow you if you just have the basic certification.
Depends on the
want
site.
you to have the advanced.
Yeah, the basic is just like
different.
simple 1040s.
Yeah.
Simple. And we had a lot of them, and we get a lot of that at my site. So they accept
That's good.
basic people.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's
great.
Apparently each site is different, then that's pretty cool. That's good.
So Mindy is mentioning in chat that there's actually a list on the IRS site showing the difference between basic and advanced. So if anybody would like to know, and you could do like what Megan was saying, where she was basic for 2. Well, you're never basic. Megan, you are not basic. Not basic, but she did the basic certification and worked volunteering with those for 2 years, and then you upped your game and did the advanced.
Yeah, because I was terrified. I found the whole thing very terrifying, and
Really? Tell me about
so I
that.
was not ready to be advanced.
I want to hear a little bit about that, because I'm guessing that's and if anybody in who's here live would like to pop your chat in or your question in the chat if you haven't asked it already. Megan, tell me a little bit about that, because I bet if you were terrified, there are others who were terrified too. And I don't know if Aneisha or Shiree or Caroline can speak to that or not, but tell us your why.
I mean, I haven't done my own taxes like in since we bought our house, which is a duplex, right? So I've got rental. Like I've never done my own. We've got rental property. We've got self-employment. I work with nonprofits, so even like the kind of stuff that I know is not at all the kind of stuff I was doing for tax prep. So I felt like I was such a newbie, right? I knew so little that I needed to get my feet wet a little bit and wade in before I was willing to swim on some of that harder stuff. Although there's weird stuff like the education credits are a basic topic, and that stuff's hard.
Oh, interesting. The education credits are a basic topic. So now I wouldn't have expected that.
No, I think they should be advanced, but they're not.
Hope is agreeing that first tax return is terrifying because you don't want to mess anyone's tax situation up. And Aneisha and Caroline, you agreed it was scary at first? What?
Well, they're sitting right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're watching
you. Like type it in.
Right.
Like ask the questions, and they can see when you look confused, and you're like,
you gotta go get some help.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for doing it anyway. You talk about it being terrifying. One of my very favorite quotes, something that I learned later in life than it was when I was turning 40. Something that I learned was that being fearless, people who appear to be confident and fearless, it doesn't mean they're not afraid. It just means that they're doing it anyway. And this is that kind of thing. You're not fearless, you're just as scared as the next person. And you went and you signed up and you volunteered and you're doing taxes, and it's helping you be a better bookkeeper. And I'm endlessly impressed with all of you and so grateful for your service to our brothers and sisters who are citizens in our country. So thank you very much. Thank you for also helping to close that tax gap, which I know I talk about a lot, the tax gap being the difference between how much, if everybody filed their taxes exactly correctly, and how much people actually file their taxes for, how much people actually pay. That difference between the two of them is the tax gap. And you're helping to close that tax gap and make a difference in that way as well. So does anybody have any last thoughts, last moments, anything that they would like to share?
I do. I'm
Please.
proud of you guys because it was scary. I remember when I went through my tax training program, like you said, just showing up, not wanting to mess anybody's paperwork up. That person just sitting right there looking at your whole return, your first return, like you made it. Like I'm proud of you guys because I know that was terrifying for me. So if anybody's thinking about doing it, like you can do it. Just go get your course and do your training and just go for it.
Yeah. Mindy's asking what's the best time of year to do the training. And Aneisha mentioned in chat that training started in November, December, but they still accept people after it starts. So today is sort of the best day, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just go for it.
Get started. Well, thank you all so much for being with us today. Thank you for your service. Thank you for being such a gracious and wonderful members of Ask a CPA and for helping everybody learn about these incredible volunteer programs. Again, we're going to put this up on our Ask a CPA recordings, and we're going to make this public on our YouTube channel. Once I share that out, I will make sure you all get copies and you can share this with your networks. We were delighted to have you here with us today. And for those of you who are not already familiar with Ask a CPA, this was a bonus session for our incredible group of bookkeepers who have joined Ask a CPA for our education, for you to be able to ask a tax preparer questions, to ask a CPA questions you can't necessarily ask your own clients' tax pros for whatever reasons. We know there are a lot of reasons out there. No judgment. This is a safe space. We meet at least twice a month, and we normally do Q&As where I will answer questions as a CPA, but today was a very special panel with these incredible women who are doing amazing work. We're so grateful for you, and remember that knowledge is power. So please keep asking questions. See you next time.